Hello and welcome to our series, Coping in COVID Times, brought to you by the movement Non-Violence Begins With Me. I'm Candice, Clarke, Salloum, and welcome to the next hour where we'll be sharing with a number of people on the issue of domestic violence. And those of you who have been following us since Sunday would have seen, we had Judy McSween talk about mental health and wellness. We had the New Life Ministries team talk about substance abuse. And today we're going to look at domestic violence. And we have a panel discussion and we have a talk by Gregory Sloane-Seale. Many of you would know him. But before we start that, I'd like to take you back a couple of years when the movement for nonviolence begins with me began. And we thought at that time that it was important to get our message across and through various mechanisms. And one of the ways that we did that was through a peace rally in the Queen's Park Savannah. It was on Easter Monday, a beautiful Easter Monday. And it's my pleasure now to bring you a clip from that peace rally.
We gotta save it, oh yeah, my sweet TNT. We used to sing sweet, sweet Trinidad. To leave here, boy, you must be mad. This is the land of milk and honey, rum and coke and easy money. While those verses we were singing, alarm bells kept on ringing. Pundits on each pulpit saying, oh heart and oh soul decaying. Suddenly we wake up to a living nightmare of bliss, while editorials ask, how did we ever come to this? But so long we hearing, you got to stand up and be counted. But daily we're intimidated. Every day our next witness silence, while we recoil from the violence. In our land there is a crisis, rogue police, unruly ISIS, while sweet revenge gangs exacting. Police commissioner still acting Trinbago. It's high time we separate the goat from the sheep. Tell them talk is cheap. We're caught in the whirlwind we had to reap. While them police busy playing hide and seek, we're facing the whirlwind we had to reap. Oh yeah. Whoa. Save our land, Trinidad and Tobago. Oh yeah. In our schools, kids getting on, who are fighting, making porn. Or schoolgirls you won't believe, live MMA, they pulling a weave. Check the vibes they're living by. Dance all, slackness, get rich or die. Alkaline to Movado, mention maestro, they don't know. No morals, no ethics. There is a centrifugal black hole. Lord, we must move quick to wake their conscience and save their soul. So long we've been hearing evil triumphs when good men do nothing. No triggers pump while words we fraughting, and while church attendance real low. Protest back plus them casino, while black market prices haggling. True ports, big guns they smuggling. Spanish women hot like the music. Saucy salsa, human traffic, Trinbago. We can't wait. The devil making hay while we sleep. Tell them talk is cheap. While we look on them as more mothers weep. Hey, yeah. Oh yeah. Whoa. Save our land. has been revealed. How they find Shannon Banfield. Busiest street, yes, in our city. Killed by beasts to show no pity. Now there's fear and trepidation. What is happening to our nation? So I pray this one infraction will propel us into action. Trinbago, the time is now. We have to take our country back while these monsters plow. We cannot run from their attack. That is why I'm still saying, time to stand up and be counted. We must defeat this threat they've mounted. We cannot wait for no Messiah, like Nero fiddling through the fire. For while the flames we keep romancing, the Grim Reaper keeps advancing across the land, cast his shadow, slashing victims to the marrow. Trinbago, the time is now. Look how the murder red lip tell them talk is cheap. Before more of our daughters they put to sleep. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show. Bye.
And so the beautiful voice of Corrine Ash, many of you know her. And I'm reminded as I listen to that song, you know, the beauty of Trinidad and how we need to become a peace-loving nation. I was sent something today by a friend who said, and it said, to become non-violent, we must embrace the negative and positive aspects of ourselves. And, you know, as we think through these times, COVID, there's so many positive experiences that people have shared. You know, the time that spiritual growth has happened, they become closer to family members as you're locked in. But there have been negative aspects to this as well. And one of them has been the rise in domestic violence. And in fact, the United Nations says that the rise in domestic violence has been a shadow pandemic. And they have reported up to a 20% rise in cases. And of course, I think these may be just reported cases. So to speak to us on this topic is Gregory Sloane-Seale. I'm very pleased to have him with us to be able to speak on this topic. Gregory?
Okay, hi. Unmasking domestic violence and abuse. First off, I just want to define a little bit domestic violence. Most times we think of it in terms of only intimate partner violence, you know, between husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, that sort of scenario. However, within the domestic sphere, which is the home environment, we're looking at, you know, sibling violence. We're looking at child on parent, parent on child violence, and anything in between. Okay, so it's about family members cohabitating in various forms and fashions, who, for whatever reason, are not living in a peaceful and unified environment. Prior to COVID, we would have seen throughout Trinidad and Tobago, you know, high levels already exist of domestic violence. We see it in the news too often, and we hear stories. We have family, we have friends, we have neighbors, colleagues who are involved in situations at home that are not, you know, the best scenarios. But prior to COVID, those were the days when, you know, we'd sleep for 8 hours, we'd be up preparing ourselves for school, for work, and where we'd be for another 8 hours. And then we're home for maybe 6 hours. And during that time, you know, we have our things to do, our chores to do, we prepare a meal, get the kids ready, you know, supervise some homework, these sort of things. And, you know, the days were fairly short, so to speak. Not less stressful, because, you know, there's traffic to contend with and everything else like that. But within the home environment, there were already, you know, a certain level of stress, okay, within the environment. And then, with the onset of COVID-19, came this disruption in our everyday routine. And one thing with human beings that we know is that a disruption in routine can cause a myriad of uneasiness, anxiety, depression, especially when you're not sure what happens next. And this is what COVID has brought to us in Trinidad and Tobago, the region and the world, a certain level of uncertainty. And then came the whole concept of locking down. And that is something that, Trinidad and Tobago, even with regards to, when we would have had states of emergencies in the past, there was still a time period when you could go out and you could socialize. You'd have to be back at a certain time, okay, and you're home for, let's say a 12-hour period, overnight period. But with this lockdown, it saw many persons, both young and old, being confined within their home environment for, in the first instance, it was 2 weeks, then 4 weeks, then 6 weeks. But still, we could have gone out, we could have, gone for a walk, gone for a jog, go for a hike, go to the beach, go to a river. And then all of a sudden, that got curtailed also. So all these various activities and engagements that we would do on a normal day-to-day that would help us to alleviate the day-to-day stress, help us rejuvenate our energy, rejuvenate our minds, and add a certain distance to our relationships at home, which is very healthy, So when you get home, you haven't seen the person for the day, you can chat, you can talk, and so forth. What you find happening is you're now home. No school for many of us, no work, or a shift system, 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off. And every waking moment, you're at home with your spouse, with your parents, with your children, whatever have you. And that has definitely exacerbated many problems within the household. Frustration levels have risen. We've been getting reports, a lot of reports to the Children's Authority, let's say, on child abuse issues. Domestic violence issues, intimate partner issues have been increasing locally. And, what can we do? We ask why. Well, if it is we barely got along in the first instant, and now we find ourselves in a confined space where we're frustrated, where economically we are now, very frustrated. You don't know if you're going to meet the rent coming at the end of the month. That places a lot of stress within the family unit. And what happens when people are under a lot of stress? They want to find some way to alleviate that stress. So what has also been increasing is the use of psychotropic drugs, okay? And that can be alcohol, that can be marijuana, and anything in between. So we have seen an increase in that. I talk to people every day about the day-to-day situations that they're living under. And just this morning, I spoke to a young man in his 30s who is in an intimate relationship with a young lady. And he was telling me that, he's been smoking a lot more marijuana and cigarettes, right? He doesn't drink, but he smokes cigarettes, buys about $50 to $100 a day in marijuana. If you do the math on that, you realize that it's quite a financial bind because he's not working full-time at the moment. Yet, he was explaining to me that, this is his only vice and it keeps him calm. But he's still in a situation where he feels frustrated and he and his partner are constantly fighting. Verbally, most of the time, but sometimes it becomes physical. This is not a one-off experience in Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately, where the frustration levels due to the uncertainty, the underemployment has really exacerbated the problem. And then where children are concerned, we have all our kids have been home from school since March, April, okay? So it seems like it's just been one long August vacation, as we say. And now we know that school is also going to be out until January. So children themselves have been home. They've been witnessing the dysfunction within the family network, within the household, which in itself is a form of abuse, because any child who's going to experience the incessant arguing and verbal and possibly physical abuse of their parents or other siblings, what have you, that in itself is a form of psychological and mental abuse. But many children are also experiencing abuse themselves, physical, emotional, mental, all right? Because let's remember something. School is not just about academics. School is also a ground, a space where young people get to socialize with their peers, right? And this is so important because human beings, as we know, we are social creatures. And with them being at home, unless there's some facility for them to interact with other children, their age, family members, and so forth, it can be very, very lonely. And this loneliness in and of itself can lead to all sorts of other problems, okay? A lot of children are experiencing depression, high levels of anxiety, fear of the unknown, fear that, you know, they may catch COVID, all these things. And when they can't express themselves, it's usually going to play out in negative behaviors, okay? Which to adults, parents, other siblings, and so forth may come across as annoying, whatever have you. And then that, once again, can exacerbate the relationships within the household and just bring more misunderstanding and more argument towards the child, okay? So it's a time where we really have to find it within ourselves to communicate within the family network and communicate in such a way that, you know, we can actually, I would suggest that we actually sit down as a family, those who live in the same space, and write down what are the things you like, what are the things you think you can improve, what are the things you think those around you can improve, and also what are the things of those around you that you like. So we can start that process of just understanding how everyone feels and you know, so we can understand each other better. It's very easy for us to go into our own heads, into our own emotions, and become very selfish, right? And believe that we are the only ones going through this current situation, not recognizing that we all are experiencing high levels of uncertainty, anxiety, and frustration, okay? And one of the best ways to attempt to alleviate that is through open and honest communication. It's not something that we are accustomed to doing in Trinidad and Tobago. You know, this is a country, from the time you're small, it's do as I say, not as I do. It's how we've been socialized, how we've been raised. But it's very important, especially in this time, because this is an extraordinary time. So it calls for extraordinary approaches to dealing with it. So things, all of us, none of us have been through this type of situation before. So, you know, it's a time for us to think to ourselves, okay, you know what? We've never been through this before. So let's try to do things that we've never done before. Let's try to communicate better. Let's try to open up and learn to get along. You know, maybe you have a pack of cards. You know, you can start to schedule your day at home, where you can schedule in chores, you can schedule in social in time, you can schedule in, well, now school is back for those who have online access and so forth. So definitely, you know, scheduling your school time, you know, time for movies, TVs, whatever have you, you know, and let's try to work as a unit to alleviate the, you know, the whole situation right now that has led to the increases in domestic violence and child abuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. You know, unfortunately, what you've described for us is the reality for many of our families, you know, children and spouses and you know, the elderly living with us. And I like what you've said, you know, it's extraordinary times, you know, positive and negative, and this calls for extraordinary solutions. So what I'd like to do now is open up to our audience. We have with us Sophie Barker, Aaron DeMattis, and Zita Dennis. I'll ask them to introduce themselves, and perhaps what they can do is just share their own thoughts, you know, their own perspectives on what Gregory has shared, or your own kind of thinking around this issue of domestic violence. And perhaps I can start with Zita. Zita, you can introduce yourself and begin sharing. Zita, you may be on mute.
previous to that, I was a free tax collector, just imagine a tax collector. And now I am mostly at home in my domestic church. When I heard that you were in a lockdown, honestly, I got scared because at home, it's not the perfect house. There is tension because I am the head of home and I'm a grandmother to something in the home. And that difference caused a lot of problems, at least for me. And then I heard that we were being locked down. I said, Lord, what am I to do? I have tried everything in the book and nothing seemed to work. I can't stay 24/7 like this. And the Lord said to me, I just heard, be humble. I said, not humble? Yes, humility. Now I think, oh, what could I be? Because to me I was going backwards. And I realized I was in charge. Zita was in charge. And said, ask which option. And then I continue praying because like flat kite, I knew I have to adjust. And the Lord says again, humility, listen. So I thought I meant listen to him, but it wasn't listen to him, it was listen to those with whom I live. Give them an opportunity, hear what they're saying, and listen attentively. Now, this is what I start doing, and things have changed. Thank God. Those with whom I live, they are more relaxed. I am more relaxed because I realize something also. I have to start it. I have to do it. I cannot say, I know, man, they are born so naughty. I am one, I thought after hearing that word from the Lord, I have to begin the process of listening, of understanding, of removing arrogance and pride, so that others can see they would see the change in me, and they have responded in a positive. So thank God for that. It is an ongoing process, perfect there, but I know if I leave myself open from the Spirit and I sat to strip myself of arrogance and pride, which I realized I had, but I see now that that's what the problem is. Things improve, and COVID, at the end of COVID, we were a better family.
Thank you, Zita. Really important, I think, and it ties back that listening, an important part of the communication that Gregory spoke about a little while ago. Thank you for your honest sharing, and perhaps I can ask Aaron to introduce yourself and share your own thoughts on your experience and on this topic as well.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron DeMatos. I am 27 years old. I am an actor by studies. And, you know, this topic, domestic violence, is very close to me because it's something that, you know, it's a very strong topic. And I did some reading on it, and there's some data here that was collected by the Trinidad and Tobago, because it's a lot, you know, we see that on the internet and stuff. Trinidad and Tobago police revealed that there were approximately 11,441 reports relating to domestic violence incidents between 2010 and 2015. Approximately 75% of those reports were related to female individuals, you know, and when we look at that, domestic violence, we only hear about, okay, abuse in women, about women. We don't hear mostly anything about males, you know, getting abuse. And it's something that, I don't know if it's masculine wise, why, you know, we don't hear that about our males, but, you know, it's something that needs to be addressed because it's an important topic, you know, domestic violence and abuse. You know, I saw a video, I think it was 3 weeks ago online, where there was this person, I think husband and wife, and the husband was beating his wife, and a person was reported it, and he posted up on social media. And it was, you know, something serious like that. The wife could have gotten, you know, killed or something, because she was seriously abused by her husband. And then too, if you look to 2 days ago, I think, or yesterday's papers, we saw that a lady was chopped to death by her husband. So I think that there is definitely a rise in these cases, seen, like Gregory said, in the lockdown. And there are some ways that, you know, I think that we should come up with to cope with this time, especially in COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, for sharing these statistics. I think, you know, that's an important indication. You know, those are reported stats that Aaron shared with us, but certainly, you know, we know that there are others that take place as well. And I'd like to invite our next person on the audience, Sophia Barcant, to share her thoughts as well. Sophia?
Thank you. So I'm Sophie Barcant. I'm a parenting coach and life coach and a facilitator, trainer of neuroleadership programs and workshops. I'm a married woman with a large family, and my passion is understanding human behavior. And I'm not a psychologist, as I just said, I'm just training and coach background. But I have discovered with all my life experiences and research that it's really like what Gregory stated, when people act out, it's because of feelings that are not being understood. And so, and just like, you know, I have to commend Zita for listening to the Holy Spirit, telling her about listening, because that is a need. It's a basic need of everybody to be listened to. And my theory is, it's not just mine, it's basic understanding now among psychologists, that misbehavior speaks. When people are not having their needs met, they misbehave, adults and children. So my take on all of this is that the domestic violence is taking place because people don't understand their emotions. They don't understand their feelings. They don't understand the needs that are not being met. They don't even know how to verbalize and understand how they feel, okay? So they lash out. So my take on this is that we need to have a major campaign on educating people on their emotions, on understanding their emotions, and to help them realize it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel fear. It's okay to feel anxiety. But people need education on how to process these big feelings. People don't know how to process the big feelings. So a major campaign needs to take place, I think, to help people understand the needs of those around them, their own needs, their emotional needs, the psycho-emotional needs, and the consequences of not paying attention to those needs. Once people are educated and help to understand that if they don't meet their children's needs and even their own needs, then they're going to lash out, and the behavior, you know, is going to come out. That's the undesirable behavior, the antisocial behavior, the destructive behavior. So that's what I see, you know, that a major campaign needs to take place to educate people on emotions and how to regulate the emotions.
Thank you for that, Sophie. And, you know, I'd like to open that up to the audience in particular, you know, that if I including Gregory, if I'm to think of, you know, nonviolence begins with me, it starts with that recognition that how am I contributing to violence in society? And I think what Sophie shared there is really important, and I'd like the audience to comment on that. And that first step, you know, recognizing these emotions that are welling up, Maybe some of us are at work, maybe some are not. What are they? Is it anger? Is it anxiety? It's unprecedented, exceptional, as Gregory shared with us before. And I really do believe that first step is just getting in touch with what we're feeling and not feeling any shame. I had a conversation about that earlier. Not feeling any shame in having that, but in having those emotions, but then being able to process it and move on. So I don't know if there's anyone in the audience that would like to share their thoughts on that first step and that first step around recognition.
I think that the emotion now would be anger and frustration, because let's say like look at someone who lost their job. They would be frustrated because they are accustomed, getting up at a certain time, having a certain routine, and seeing that they lost that job and they basically out of routine. A lot of frustration will take them, and they will get angry quite easily, and that could lead to them, out bursting towards their family members. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Anyone else?
I think that is quite right, because when I speak and those house do not listen to me and do what I say, I get very angry. And that's the time when I will abuse verbally or emotionally by what I say and how I say. But this is because I'm angry. And Sharon said, I have to learn to control my emotions so that I do not speak in a way that is abusive and cause anyone emotional trauma, which is domestic violence. I never thought I would violent because I never struck anyone, but my words could have been very violent, which is not the best thing. And thank God, I am learning how to control the anger with His grace, and so have a better relationship in the family.
Thank you. I think anger is certainly one of the emotions that we feel. There are others. There's fear, there's anxiety, there's even grief. Grief for things that you're not able to do. Grief around hugging. I mean, I just something simple as that, not being able to touch your loved ones, not being able to see your loved ones. So there are a myriad of emotions that I think that we feel, anger certainly being one of them. But I think they all, and I'd like to ask Gregory to come in on this, I think they all can lead to violence. Anger, we think initially, obviously kind of leads to domestic violence, but can grief lead to domestic violence? Can anxiety lead to domestic violence? There are all these various emotions that can have the same impact in our families. Gregory, I don't know if you can share your thoughts.
Just to sort of piggyback on what Sophia was saying earlier on, definitely. If we don't have the tools to express ourselves in a positive manner, and the expression has to come out because it's bubbling over, then it flows out in all sorts of all sorts of negative ways. All right. So it's really about teaching people or making people aware of tools that are available to them when they start to feel these types of feelings. And it can be simply as when you start to feel agitated or angry within a given situation, physically remove yourself. Maybe go for a walk if you can. Listen to some music that you enjoy, that makes you calm. Read a book. Just redirect yourself, because we're going to have situations, most definitely, where all those feelings are bubbling over. right? And because everyone is experiencing it more or less at the same time, that active listening that Sophie was talking about, that people need to learn to listen and so forth, that mightn't be readily available within your household because everyone wants to say something and has something to say and feels that their burden is the heaviest. So if you start a complaint or you want to verbalize something, they want to verbalize it also. So, you know, it's about understanding your environment, understanding the individuals around you, but more importantly, understanding yourself and finding that comfort zone within yourself where you can, you know, just relax until you can re-engage with those around you.
Thank you, Gregory. And Sophie, you mentioned a campaign. You know, what do you think that campaign could look like, getting people to recognize what their thoughts are, what their emotions are, that can help, you know, in that first step, that first vital step in healing?
Right. Well, the TV and the radio, they are such a force, you know, that we have at our disposal. Let's get programs. At one time the government put on all sorts of little programs to teach people all sorts of things. Well, let's get the programs on, teaching people about their emotions and the consequences of not dealing with them. And let's teach them the skills, just like Gregory said. There's so many things you can do. Deep breathing, it's scientifically proven that just breathing deeply can diffuse the stress, you know, the heart rate.
I think we've frozen a bit with.
I remember the Psychology Association offering all sorts of phone numbers. So it's not that people have to vent on their family members, but, you know, through the media, we can offer them avenues where they can be informed on understanding themselves and help them understand what is going on with themselves and give them phone numbers or a place to go. Okay, we are allowed out. We can go into buildings. Let us offer some venues where they can go, where they can be listened to. There are just many ways where we can support people to learn about all of this and to give them a space, a safe space that's confidential and where their private information will not be, you know, spread anywhere. And so they have to be informed. There's a lot of education has to take place, and the TV and the radio, that is the place because everybody's tuned into some sort of media.
And, you know, this is what, you know, this series is actually meant to do. Be part of that campaign that gets you in touch with your feelings. I mean, everyone has been impacted by COVID, directly or indirectly. We've had, as Gregory said, we've had activities, we've had our routine disrupted. And in that space, what has come about, you know, we heard about anger, we heard about grief, we heard about anxiety, we heard about uncertainty. And a little later on in the program, Sophie will go through with us some of the tools that we can use ourselves to help manage these sometimes very strong emotions that we can have as we face these uncertain times. But for right now, what I'd like to do is, you know, one thing that was mentioned is listening to lovely music, listening to inspirational music, and that too can help with emotions, as music can transport us. And I think that that's a very readily, easily available tool that we can use. And we've incorporated that into our programs, those of you who have been following it, because we see it as very powerful. So I'd like to go back to our Peace Rally of 2017 and share with you a very lovely piece from our famous Mangal Patisa. Okay, I think we have some technical difficulties with that, so that's certainly. But on that topic, you know, let's look at things that are easily available. I know some years ago, adult coloring came back into fashion, and certainly that's something that's very soothing. So we have, you know, things like music, things like coloring, things like art, things like someone mentioned going for a walk. Now we have to be masked, but certainly being in the outdoors, even just around your neighborhood, if you can't get to some place with trees, certainly those kinds of very simple tools. You know, we all learned in school, you know, count to 10 before hitting send. That deep breathing and that getting into ourselves and getting in touch with ourselves with meditation, etc., are tools that are readily available. Those of us who don't have as much access to technology can certainly call upon those kinds of things. And I can open, you know, I can open as we wait. Well, we're ready with Mangal Patasar. So that beautiful piece is actually called Dreadlocks by Mangal Patasar. Extremely soothing. And so, you can take advantage of just music as one of the tools. And actually right now on our program, what we're going to look at is explore some of those tools that we can use in our daily life. And we're going to ask Sophia to share with us some of what she uses in her own practice, and to share with us. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you. So I'd like to invite everybody to either get some of these or imagine they have some, and keep them handy or just imagine that they have them. And really train ourselves to look at things from a different perspective. Recently, one of my children had a really horrible accident, and we just had to say it could have been worse, And so let's try, and yes, we are facing difficult times with losing jobs. My husband and I both lost big jobs in March, right at the lockdown. And we really need to dig deep and find within ourselves ways to be grateful for the things that we have, and to look at things from another perspective, that things could be worse and things will turn around. And, with our peace of mind, if we top up ourselves with some of these skills of remaining at peace and calm, then we can think rationally to solve our problems and our challenges. When we are uptight, cortisol is flowing into our bloodstream in excessive amounts. And when this cortisol is flowing, it blocks our rational thinking. So it's very important to take that step back, to pause and to do the breathing as was suggested, to allow our heart rate to calm, to allow dopamine instead, which is a positive hormone, to help our mind think clearly. Okay, I've lost the job, I have to work from home, the children are not paying attention. Okay, what can I do? We've got to be in control of ourselves to steer the ship. Otherwise, it's just going to be floating everywhere. Okay? So besides looking at things from a different perspective and itemizing the things that we're grateful for, let's every day write 3 new things we're grateful for every day. This trains our brain to scan the world for good. There's so much cultural bias. There's so much bias everywhere. There's so much negativity, negative bias, that we need to fight it all the time. And we fight it by seeing the good, by looking for the good, and looking for the opportunities that are arising out of the difficult challenges. And one of the skills that I'm really promoting these days is mindfulness. Mindfulness, neuroscientists are realizing this, psychotherapists are using this in their practices a lot with children and adults. Mindfulness can help us learn to focus better. And children who now have a very challenge to focus on their lessons online and so on are super challenged. And if we take some time to top up ourselves, fill our emotional bank accounts to get peace of mind for ourselves, we can practice it with our children and teach them this mindfulness. Mindfulness can entail just staring at a pretty object. Find something pretty in your home, or sit outside and look at one tree and go for 1 minute to stare at this tree in calm. Okay, you breathe, you calm yourself, and you stare at this tree, or stare at a plant or a flower or this object. Go for 1 minute, and then 2 minutes. And you're not thinking about having an opinion or judgment about this thing. You're just paying attention to it. Neuroscience is showing that this is changing something in our brain, that helps us to be more calm and helps us to focus better. Children need this more than ever. We need it more than ever. We've gotten this cultural ADHD, especially with our devices, that some of us are getting addicted to. If you're walking, you can stare at a tree on a mountain or at the top of a building. Walk for a long distance and just stare at this object. And this is doing something in our brain that will help us to be more focused and more calm, and will help us to pay more attention and listen better to others around us. Another technique I'd like to promote, and we heard about it last night from Judy McSween, I think, is journaling. Journaling is like a purge. It's like a detox. Get some scrap paper, and it doesn't matter how anybody's spelling. I remember my 3-year-old being upset with me, and she, in her little inventive spelling, wrote to me how she didn't like how I was treating her, and she just vented on paper. It's literally like a detox, and I really encourage, I've done this a lot. And God bless her, Sister Paul from the Foundation for Human Development, she promoted this as well, and it really, really helps a lot. It helps to diffuse those emotions, all the anger, and you can use all the bad words you want and say all the terrible things about somebody who might have upset you or a situation, and nobody will see it. You scrunch it up, you tear it up. When you finish, you dispose of it. So those are just a few of the things I'd like to invite people to consider. I don't know how much time I have. And if anybody wants more tips, they can look for me on my Facebook page or something.
Thank you, Sophie. And perhaps we can open it up to, others who may have some thoughts around it. I particularly, think, have some questions around mindfulness, and I attended a program on it some years ago. And I see how it really, when applied, how it can really change your focus. Perhaps, Sophie, you can share with us a little bit more on the neuroscience behind it.
Well, there's an amazing doctor called Dr. Mark Waldman and Dr. Andy Newberg, and you can look them up. They actually have written books called How Words Change Your Brain, How God Changes Your Brain. They have taken fMRI imaging of people's brains while they are meditating, while they're doing mindful meditation. They teach this to business executives at Marymount Loyola University and invite these executives for 1 minute to do this. And just things are happening in their brain that are just enabling them to be more empowered, to maintain their calm and to be less irritable and less frustrated. And the emotions are just not so intense when things don't go as we would like them to, when situations are more challenging. So that's the only thing I can really share about that. But they have a lot of stuff online.
Thank you. One of the things that came out in Sunday's show, those of you who looked at it, was that practicing that pause. And I think that that meditation, that stopping and being mindful in the moment is so important in getting in touch with our emotions. What I'd like to do in the few minutes that we have to wrap up is just to go around and to our audience, including Gregory, to just share final thoughts on this topic, coping in COVID times and the issue of domestic violence. So perhaps we can start with Aaron.
I think that, going with COVID and stuff, I think that as the family, we should find some things, positive things to do, It's a new way of living. So we should, find new ways, like Sophie said, art, music, try family game time, it helps. All of these things helps to, lessen the curve of frustration, but helps us, join as a family, because we need to be as one, and especially in these times, look out for one another. So that's my thoughts on it, find new ways of getting around the family and having family time, family culture time,
Thank you very much. I think that's important. Back to that communication that Gregory shared. I'm not sure that Zita can hear us, but I'm going to check to see whether she can, and if she can, I'll give her a few seconds. Can you hear us, Zita? Does not look so. Technical difficulties. Sophie, your final thoughts before I go to Gregory as we wrap up today's session.
Yes, I'm so eager to share this final thought I want people to realize that listening isn't just listening to words. There's listening to behavior, okay? We have body language, and any kind of misbehavior we see taking place is speaking. It is a red flag that the person is not feeling okay. The person has fears they don't know how to deal with. I gave a workshop to men some time ago and asked them to write what they're fearing most, and they all said they're feeling inadequate. Okay, so men in particular don't know how to verbalize and understand their own feelings, but these men wrote that they're feeling inadequate. So we have to really listen to people's behavior and show some compassion, for the unspoken messages that they are giving with their behavior, and help them and give them support and direct them to ways that they can get the support to vent it somehow in a safe way.
Thank you. And that word compassion, I think it's so very important for us we talked a lot about ourselves, but I think recognizing our own thoughts and our own emotions gives us that kind of clearance to be able to see what others are going through, let's just look at our family. If we're overcome with anger, if we're overcome with anxiety, overcome with grief, it doesn't give us that space to be able to see that my child is also hurting, and hurting from seeing you in grief, or hurting on, his or her life has been taken away, his routine, his, what he or she knows. And so it's important, I think, to just come back to getting in touch with our own emotions so that we can show compassion to others. And in the few seconds we have left, I really would like Gregory to give his closing thoughts.
Well, as a Trinbagonian male who has had feelings of inadequacy, insecurity, jealousy, all those negative emotions, for me, it's about owning it and transforming it into something positive and something that will help you to, strengthen your emotions and your resolve to be a better person. We're all striving to be better people, okay? And those feelings are feelings that are definitely very valid. And when it appears and when it comes up, especially in the male, society tells us all sort of things that we shouldn't feel that way. It's not masculine to feel inadequate or insecure and these sort of things. But I just want males out there to know, particularly, to own those feelings. They're human feelings. They're normal, natural, but they're feelings that we can transcend into a more positive way, using some of the tools that Sophie would have just spoken about. The meditation, the going out into for a walk in nature, or even just starting a process of listening to others, so that you yourself would allow others to also listen to you. It's really an opportunity for us to do things differently as we are right now, and really start to work on our inner health and our inner happiness.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience. We have Aaron and Zita, to Sophie, who's been able to share with us some of her thoughts on coping tools, and of course to Gregory, who shared with us his own experience in dealing with persons living in a domestic violence situation, and his thoughts on how we can overcome these. So thank you very much. And I really like that we've left on a positive note, because I think, as dark as these times can seem, it really is up to us to find where that lifeline is and to hold on to it and to change ourselves so that we can turn it into something that's transformative and something that's very positive. So we really thank you for joining us, and we'd like you to continue to look at this series. We have until Friday, every night, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 9 o'clock on this station, Trinity TV, or on Facebook Live. And of course, if you're on Facebook, these are recorded. You can look at it at other times as well. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to your comments. If there are comments that you have on the show, we can incorporate it into our show or get back to you. Thank you very much.